formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction, which is what it is. No bomb does what this is doing. 200 to 300,000 people die every year that we know of. So we're formally classifying fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction.
4:22 a.m. Tacoma, Washington. Federal official operates fentanyl network. 160 million laundered. 22 core members arrested. 4 tons of narcotics seized. 310 victims rescued. This is the largest Somali-American criminal infiltration ever uncovered on U.S. soil. Let me show you how deep it goes.
He's accused of having ties to a drug operation based in Mexico. The DEA investigator in charge of the case says he hasn't seen this much heroin ever seen.
America thought its ports were protected. Scanners active, inspection strict, systems secure. But none of it mattered because the threat didn't come from outside. It came from the federal official who controlled those systems. With one signature, he could shut cameras, bypass inspections, and open a silent corridor for anything to enter the country. And someone else followed that corridor. His own twin brother using the same routes to build a fentanyl empire. This wasn't smuggling. This was a breach of national security engineered from inside the government. If you want the truth exposed, hit like and comment exposed. It was 10:42 p.m. on a cold, rainy night along I-35 near Minneapolis. Traffic was thin, the road slick, nothing unusual until a black SUV slammed into the center barrier. Sparks exploding across the asphalt. Smoke poured from the hood. Before the first trooper arrived, the driver, a Somali man in his 30s, bolted into the darkness, abandoning the vehicle. When state troopers opened the rear hatch, everything changed. Inside was 620,000 fentanyl pills, 4 untraceable handguns, and a laptop sealed with military-grade encryption. But the item that froze every agent was a federal access badge on the back seat issued to Abdul Rahman Ramnoir, a senior Homeland Infrastructure security official. The fentanyl alone held the power to kill 1 million Americans. What should have been a routine crash became a national security alarm. Within hours, investigators realized this wasn't a smuggling run. It was the doorway to a hidden empire built by 2 brothers no one suspected. And what comes next is far worse. If you're ready for the next layer, comment, show me. The crash on I-35 shook every agency involved. But what happened just 36 hours later erased any doubt that a far bigger operation was unfolding. At 3:18 a.m., a cleaning crew at a St. Cloud storage facility reported a sharp chemical odor leaking from Unit 141. Police expected a faulty battery or spilled solvents. Instead, when they rolled the door open, they stepped into a nightmare. A full clandestine drug lab, ventilation pipes snaking across the ceiling, industrial heating plates, high-capacity pill presses, and 2 massive barrels marked supplement powder. Inside those barrels, 48 pounds of fentanyl mix, enough to poison entire cities. Nearby were accounting sheets listing weekly production numbers, and one name scrolled across the top: Gullah, Tacoma shipment. Investigators recognized the last name instantly. Nord. This was the second major crime scene in under 2 days. Both tied to the same Somali-American family, the twins. Abdul Rahman Ramnoir, 42. The polished Washington, D.C. federal official trusted with approving shipping lanes, port exemptions, and security overrides. Praised for reliability, untouchable. Abdullah Dolan, also 42. The ghost with no public footprint, now exposed as the architect of the North Coast Syndicate, a production and trafficking empire linked to weapon shipments in Tacoma and the secret lab discovered in St. Cloud suspicious containers at the port of Seattle. When agents cross-checked RUM's federal approval logs with transport data seized from Unit 141, the betrayal was undeniable. 27 containers labeled infrastructure materials had sailed past inspection during the exact weeks Dulles network pushed product from Washington to Minnesota. A federal official opening the gates, a twin brother filling them with poison. 2 men with the same face now standing on opposite sides of the law. What began as a routine highway crash had detonated into a multi-state conspiracy, and investigators still had no idea how violent this empire truly was. Because the next chapter isn't about discovery, it's about war. Fog, bullets, machine guns, and the syndicate's first collapse. If you're ready for the raid, type RI. At 4:22 a.m., the port of Tacoma was drowned in darkness. Fog hugged the ground, swallowing the rows of containers until the entire waterfront felt like a silent battlefield, primed to erupt. But inside Warehouse 7, the syndicate was roaring, heat lamps blazing, pill presses pounding out 300,000 fentanyl tablets a day. What they didn't know was this: federal agents had been in position for hours. DEA teams crouched behind forklifts. FBI, HRT studded their rifles behind towering containers. ICE and HSI tracked every movement from a command truck blocks away. Every encrypted tag led to this single building, and the countdown was already ticking. 10, 9, 8 flashlights tightened. Fingers hovered over triggers. 765 breaching teams moved into formation. 432, the fog trembled with tension. At exactly 4:22 a.m., the command snapped through the radios. Go. Breach. And the night exploded. Flashlights ignited the fog as a breaching team moved on the side door, but before they could reach it, a burst of automatic gunfire tore through the metal wall. Bullets ripped sparks along the concrete, forcing agents to dive behind cover. The syndicate had been waiting. Word had reached them. Someone tipped them off. Inside, Dolanus Red Harbor crew, 18 armed men, many Somali American, all loyal, had turned the warehouse into a fortress. They positioned 2 heavy machine guns behind sandbag piles, 3 AR-15 teams behind conveyor belts, and 2 armored pickup trucks reinforced with welded steel plates near the loading bay. Their job was simple: protect the product and stall federal entry long enough for Dullah to escape through a drainage tunnel leading under the pier. The firefight erupted with terrifying speed. FBI HRT fired flashbangs through broken windows, lighting up the warehouse with white thunder. One machine gun responded immediately, its muzzle flashes strobing violently against the fog. The sound was deafening, metal cracking, glass shattering, agents shouting orders over the chaos. A homemade IED detonated near a DEA SHIELD team as they tried to push forward. The blast threw debris across the floor, knocking 2 agents off balance, but causing no fatalities. The team regrouped, advanced low and slow, covering each other step by step. After 14 minutes of relentless gunfire, the tide finally shifted. HRT operators breached the east wall using a hydraulic ram, catching the Red Harbor crew from the flank. Within seconds, the defenders broke. 7 were tackled to the ground. 3 were critically wounded. 6 surrendered once their ammunition ran dry. But 2 men, including Giuliano himself, disappeared into the tunnel beneath the warehouse, escaping into the cold mist of the waterfront. When agents secured the building, the scale of the operation stunned everyone. 1.22 million fentanyl pills, $4. 7 million in cash, 16 rifles, and 3 machine guns. 6 Somali children kept as movable shields and evidence linking dozens of shipments to Rum's federal approvals. The battle was over, but the war between the 2 brothers and the nation that trusted one of them was only beginning. The Tacoma raid should have ended the network, but instead it opened a door federal agents never expected to walk through. While evidence teams swept through Warehouse 7, technicians recovered a crushed mud-soaked phone near the loading bay, one of the devices used by the Red Harbor crew. The phone was damaged, but not dead. When the fog war at the port of Tacoma digital forensics team extracted the encrypted logs, a chilling pattern emerged. 212 outgoing messages, all to a single contact listed only as H12. Cross-referencing tower data and timestamp logs revealed the truth. H12 wasn't a rival gang member. It wasn't a cartel supplier. It was Abdal Rahman Ramnur, the federal official sworn to safeguard the nation's infrastructure. The betrayal was now undeniable. Federal investigators began pulling every electronic thread tied to Ram. His email history, his port authority approvals, his ID scans at secure terminals. What they found wasn't just negligence. It was design. For nearly 3 years, Ram had manipulated the very security systems he oversaw. 38 security exemptions issued under his authority never went through secondary review. 6 customs teams at ports in Seattle and Duff were quietly reassigned, clearing a blind spot for dull shipments. 12 urgent infrastructure reports were fabricated to divert camera coverage away from loading bays used by the syndicate. And most damning, Rum's access card had been scanned at secure docks just hours before multiple fentanyl containers arrived. To an outsider, it looked like bureaucracy. To investigators, it was a roadmap of corruption. But the betrayal went further than paperwork. Financial analysis uncovered $2 million funneled into shell nonprofits connected to Somali community outreach groups that Ram publicly supported. These nonprofits quietly rerouted most of the money back into syndicate operations, safe houses, weapons, encrypted Reuters, and payments to families who cooperated. Then came the discovery inside Unit 141 in St. Cloud. On a dusty metal shelf hidden beneath a stack of expired business licenses, agents found a notebook with 2 columns written in neat handwriting. A on the left, D on the right. Under A were dates corresponding to Ram's federal approvals. Under D were identical dates tied to Dullah's shipments. Every line matched. What horrified investigators even more was the realization that Ram wasn't helping his brother out of fear or family loyalty. He was aiding him out of ambition. Notes recovered from Ram's laptop described their long-term plan. Use the syndicate's profits to influence small city elections, secure leverage over county transport authorities, then gradually expand control of the Midwest's inland freight routes. A crime empire built not with street violence, but with signatures, policy loopholes, and official stamps. The final confirmation came from audio recovered inside the Tacoma warehouse office. A single line spoken by a fleeing crew member caught on a forgotten body, MIC. The Big Brother said the port cameras won't see us tonight. Big Brother Ram. With the truth exposed, the government now faced a historic crisis. A federal official had become the architect of a multi-state fentanyl pipeline. And his twin brother, the warlord in the fog-covered warehouse, was still on the run. The facade had shattered. Now came the reckoning. For years, Ram and Dullah operated like 2 halves of the same shadow. One moving in daylight with government authority, the other commanding a criminal empire in the dark. But after the Tacoma raid, that alliance began to crack. Federal pressure intensified. Arrest warrants were being drafted. Agents were questioning Ram staff, and satellite teams were following every digital trace of Dullah's escape route. By 2:14 a.m., Ram understood the truth. The investigation was closing around him. If he didn't take control, both brothers would fall. That's when he made a decision that would change everything. After disabling the GPS on his government vehicle, Ram drove through the quiet streets of St. Paul and pulled into an abandoned warehouse district near the Rylod. There, beneath a flickering yellow street lamp, a black pickup waited. Inside was Dolina, armed, exhausted, and covered in dust from the Tacoma escape tunnel. The moment the two locked eyes, the tension was immediate. 2 men bound by blood, but divided by ambition. "What did you do?" Ram demanded, voice shaking, not from fear, but from disbelief. "They found the children. They found the machine guns. You turned the port into a war zone." Dullah stepped forward, wounded pride in every movement. "You act like you didn't know what this was. You signed the clearances. You opened the ports. You made this empire possible." Ram countered sharply. "I opened doors. You turned it into a battlefield. And now you brought federal command straight to my desk." The argument escalated. Dullah insisted Ram create a safe exit through the Canadian border using a dormant security channel only high-ranking federal officials could manipulate. Ram refused, reminding his brother that Canadian agencies were already on alert after the Tacoma firefight. Then the threat came. "If you don't help me," Dullah said, pulling a small encrypted device from his jacket, "I'll release everything. The messages, the transfers, your signatures. You'll fall before I do." For a moment, the warehouse was silent except for the distant rumble of freight trains. 2 brothers, twins, stood inches apart. The federal betrayal exposed both, realizing their carefully built pact had collapsed. What they didn't know was this. A Somali informant, frightened by the Tacoma explosion and the presence of children at the warehouse, had already tipped off Homeland Security investigations about the planned meeting. HSI surveillance teams had been shadowing Ram's movements since midnight, tracking his disabled GPS by traffic cameras and street sensors. When Ram left the warehouse at 3:02 a.m. shaken and pale, federal agents made their choice. He would become the bait. By sunrise, HSY, DEA, FBI, and federal prosecutors had assembled a joint response strategy. They drafted Operation Twins Fall, the largest coordinated manhunt in the Midwest since 2017. Over 480 federal agents were mobilized. Warrants for electronic taps, asset freezes, and immediate detention were approved before noon. At 9:14 a.m., Rahm walked into his Washington, D.C. office as if nothing had happened, only to be met by 6 federal officers and placed under arrest. He didn't resist. He simply whispered, "He's not going to stop. You don't know him." But now the government did. One brother was in custody. The other, the warlord in the fog, was next, and Operation Twins Fall was about to begin. By the time the sun rose over Washington, D.C., the two brothers had already crossed the final line, separating loyalty from betrayal. Rahm was in custody, exhausted, slumped in a federal interview room, while prosecutors pressed him for details. What he revealed over the next 3 hours changed the direction of the entire investigation. Rahm provided 64 addresses linked to the North Coast Syndicate, safe houses, broker offices, cash drops, illegal host homes, and several rural compounds. He also detailed the syndicate's secret freight pods stretching from Tacoma to Minneapolis, Chicago, Duff, and across into Montana. The information confirmed what federal agencies feared. Dula was preparing to move his remaining product and personnel out of Washington state within 48 hours. The clock started immediately. That afternoon, federal teams from FBI, DEA, HSI, ATF, and U.S. Marshals assembled in a secured operation center in Seattle. Maps covered the walls. Red lines traced shipping routes, safe house clusters, and suspected hideouts. The mission was clear. Locate Dolina. Cut down the syndicate. End the pipeline once and for all. At 5:33 a.m. the following morning, a lead broke. A drone from a surveillance team spotted movement near an isolated rental cabin tucked inside dense forest outside Everett, Washington. Thermal imaging confirmed multiple silhouettes, one matching Dula's height and gait. The order was immediate. Deploy. No delays. A convoy of unmarked SUVs rolled silently down the gravel road. Sniper teams positioned themselves along the tree line. ATF bomb technicians prepared for possible explosives. Tacoma proved that Dula fought like a man who never planned to surrender. Within minutes, a loudspeaker boomed. "Abdullah, no, this is the FBI. Come out with your hands up." Inside the cabin, lights snapped on. Then came the answer. Gunfire ripping through the thin wooden walls. Dula chose the same path he always had. Violence first, consequences later. Federal agents returned fire in controlled bursts. The cabin's windows shattered. Smoke filled the air as flashbangs detonated across the porch. A second exchange lasted nearly 19 minutes, each volley weaker than the last. Finally, a voice shouted from inside, "Stop. He's hit. He's down." Agents stormed the cabin, securing the remaining suspects. Dulanor lay on the floor, wounded but alive, surrounded by $3, $1 million in stacked cash, a duffel bag packed with unmarked weapons, encrypted Reuters, and a half-filled case holding fentanyl powder, the last shipment he would ever attempt to move. Within 24 hours, coordinated raids swept through all 64 locations Rahm had identified. The final numbers were staggering. 2.44 tons of Operation Twins Fall begins fentanyl seized. 310 victims of human trafficking rescued, 31 firearms recovered, $160 million in Doty money frozen, 22 core syndicate members arrested, and dozens of shell companies dismantled across 6 states. The Noor twins, once celebrated as symbols of immigrant success, were now the central figures in the largest Somali-American criminal takedown in U.S. history. As federal agents transported the brothers to separate detention facilities, one quiet truth settled over the investigation. America had survived a crisis engineered not by foreign adversaries, but by two brothers who used trust as their weapon and public institutions as their shield. Operation Twins Fall was complete, but the lessons it revealed would echo for years. Outro. What this case leaves behind is not just a trail of arrests, seizures, and headlines. It leaves a warning. For decades, America invested trillions of dollars into border security, port inspections, surveillance systems, and federal oversight. Cameras were installed, protocols were written, agencies were expanded, and yet none of it mattered when the danger came from inside the system itself. This was not a failure of technology. It was a failure of trust. Two brothers proved that a single signature can be more powerful than a gun, that access can be deadlier than force, and that corruption doesn't always wear the face of chaos. Sometimes it wears a badge, a suit, and a government ID. The most disturbing lesson isn't the amount of fentanyl seized or the money frozen or even the lives already lost to addiction and trafficking. It's how long this operated undetected, because systems don't collapse all at once. They erode quietly. One exemption, one ignored warning, one compromised official at a time. This case also reminds us of something uncomfortable. Accountability must apply to everyone, not just street criminals, not just smugglers, but those in power who believe their position places them above scrutiny. Justice doesn't end with arrests. It begins with awareness. And that's where you come in. Stories like this survive only if they are shared, exposed, discussed, questioned. Because silence is what allows these networks to grow. Not in the shadows, but in plain sight. If you believe the truth matters, hit like so this story reaches more people. If you believe corruption inside government must never be protected, comment expose. And if you believe accountability should have no exceptions, share this video with someone who needs to see how deep this really goes. This wasn't just the fall of a criminal network. It was a test of whether a system can confront its own reflection. One brother is behind bars. The other network has been dismantled. But the real question remains, how many others are still hidden, waiting for the silence to return? Stay alert, stay informed, and stay with us, because this story is not the end. It's the warning.